This album cover art brought up a very interesting conversation. The people officially have nostalgia fatigue. And I don't think this conversation is personal to Queen Key. She just happened to be the straw that broke the camel's back. So, from what I've seen on X, there have been a lot of opinions regarding how this generation of music artists always reference 90s creative projects. The 90s is definitely glorified. Like, let's just acknowledge that and get that out the way. And this is something that I'm guilty of too, a little bit. And at the same time, you have to acknowledge that everyone from every era or generation has always referenced things. And let's not forget, they were doing a lot of referencing in the 90s too. They say nothing new under the sun for a reason. I think a big part about why it was so impactful and memorable when artists in the 90s were referencing things from the 1970s and the 1930s is because the thing that they were referencing was still relevant to the artist's brand. You following me? And an example of this is when all the rappers were referencing the mob by wearing jazzy suits and hats and stuff. And it made sense because the lifestyle that some of these hip hop artists live were parallel to the lifestyle of a mobster or like a mob guy, whatever, you know? And I also have to question if it's the way that these projects are being executed that people are just like flat out annoyed. Or could it be that the visuals that are being referenced are too popular? Because it's not as fun, unfortunately, when so many people are referencing the same thing. Like it takes the allure out of it. If you look at the timelines of how trends cycle, I think it's like 15 to 20 years. We should have been cycled out of 90s references and trends by now. Think of somebody like a Beyonce, how she pulls references. She is deep in the archives, okay? I feel like the majority of us don't get the reference the first time, but when someone finally starts connecting the dots, it's such a treat. The 90s had a lot of elements that were inspiring, but how can we tell the difference between a sloppy copy versus a true inspiration? Do we think Queen Key's album cover would have sparked this conversation if it were executed differently? Because it wasn't a bad album cover and it wasn't even a direct copy. And I mean, at least she gave props to Lil Kim because people get weird about that sometimes. And another layer as to why I think this conversation is so interesting is because there's clearly a deep longing for 90s musicality and R&B to make a comeback. So that can stay, but all the other creative related 90s things gotta go. Now, whether you have nostalgia fatigue or not, I think that these types of conversations are important because they're ultimately going to challenge people's creativity. And I think things that are fresh and unique can come from that. And if you like this video, follow me for more cover art content.